dope. I hope this recording works better than the last one. Whew. Whew. We've got looks. This is okay. Always is. The big square beard. I need to do some trimming. All right. So, I just had. No, we're gonna roll the sleeves. We've got work to do. Okay. That's fine. Probably should go in the house where it's heated and dry. Welcome to the Death Shack, where in these videos I am going to be journaling, video logging the experiments I have running my D&D campaign. Tonight we drink the drink of the Master Hunter, and we celebrate because I just had a successful first session of D&D. I'm playing 5th edition that I've homebrewed and adjusted some things. I recorded a video of me schizophrenically marking the whiteboard, and the light wasn't directly on me enough, so I wound up having terrible video quality. I hope this is better now. I'm blinded and can barely see the camera, but we'll call it good. So, I for a long time have been unsatisfied with combat in 5th edition. Not only for the base game, but also I run into endless people's adjustments to primarily the initiative system, and they all seem to fail to me. They either make it too complicated, or it doesn't play out well enough for my imaginings of the fantasy, and that primarily comes from the way that each character takes an entire turn, and then another character takes an entire turn, and it feels to me like, well, if my character is surrounded by a group of orcs, before they even get the full chance to surround him, he's going to move out of the way before they even get close enough to attack. But in the rules, just one orc comes, attacks you. Another orc comes, attacks you. Finally, it's your turn after 4 orcs have surrounded you. You've had no opportunity to get away. You have no tactical ability to remove yourself unless you have some class ability that allows you to do that. And I don't like that. It plays poorly to me, and it just frustrates the crap out of me. So what I've done is I've changed initiative system from character-focused to a phase-focused initiative. Let's see. So phase focus, I have a number of phases, and the way it works is rather than having everyone blast their entire turn on their initiative count, we do away with initiative count and simply alternate sides, taking turns with each character until one side is entirely out of characters, and then finishing the other team. And then you move on to a second phase and do the same thing. And the names should be very illuminating. So we've got the first phase, which is, I'm just going to write them all out. Okay, so you might have a hard time reading this. It might be backwards, depending. I have two cameras. One's a GoPro, one's my phone. But it's the back camera, so it might be flipped. It definitely is flipped. But what this reads is the phase focus for my initiative, and there are phases which you move through. In each phase, you alternate character by character, team versus team, alternating back and forth until all characters have finished their desired actions on a particular phase. The phases go in the order as follows. Your first phase is a movement phase, so all creatures will move to their desired locations. You can withhold the movement to use in a later phase, or any action in a phase for a later phase. That's fine. So every character will take turns moving and placing themselves, and then spellcasters will declare their spells and intended targets. Melee will occur in the melee phase. After that, ranged will occur. After that, spells are cast and go off. And then after that, there's an upkeep phase so that the DM and the players can track their resources. Any notes that need to happen can be made. But this phase is also the beginning of the next round of combat. And one thing that I like to put in this phase, especially in overland encounters, and I did this is this session I just played was the first session of my new campaign, and it was my debut of this entire system. And I was really proud with my addition to the upkeep phase. And that is that before the first round of combat, in overworld encounters, and then in the upkeep phase of every encounter, we will alternate sides. So DM one of the players, DM another player, until all of the players have had a chance to do the following. They will roll 1d4, and the result will be a contiguous segment of squares of terrain that they can place. So I can create a rough idea of a battle map. Maybe there's a large boulder here, and there's a hill here, and a river running between them. But one of the players rolls a d4 and says, well, actually, the river is going to make a diversion and create like a small little lake. So 4 contiguous squares, boom, there's now a lake there, or a small pond, puddle kind of thing. Maybe there's a boulder, someone puts down a tree. And so the idea is that the players get to author the encounter's parameters, and that adjusts every turn. So in our second round, suddenly there's more boulders they can hide behind. Suddenly there's a thorny bush that their character can dodge behind and wait and ambush one of the goblins as they come around unawares. So you have to kind of break verisimilitude a little bit, because suddenly tables, boulders, small trees, ponds will poof into existence, but you just kind of hand wave it. It was always there, wasn't an issue, now it exists. And it always has existed, but now it really exists. And great success. Great success. My players really enjoyed it. They loved being able to alter the tactics of the terrain, and it plays really well with the phases. Because you get to do it before the movement, you can plan, oh man, you know, I want to get up on that little hill or that little cliff there. It's too steep for me to run up. You know what? I'm going to put 4 contiguous blocks or 2 contiguous blocks, whatever you roll, of, let's say, a fallen tree, and I can just clamber up that easier than I can climb up the soggy ground. So boom, you can alter the terrain a lot and then immediately make use of it as we go through the rest of the initiative. And great success. It was wonderful. So I would normally have 3 players, but my wife was sick and couldn't make it tonight. So for our first session, we just had 2 players. I am having every player roll 2 characters for a few reasons. That's good enough to start. So every player is going to have 2 characters. And this is because healing in my campaign is not your entire health pool at the beginning of every day. You gain 2 hit points per day, 3 if you have a med kit applied. Now, obviously, you can expend spell slots to cast healing spells, but the only base classes are barbarians, fighters, rogues, and wizards. More classes will be available, but they will have to come in and be earned by the characters for subsequent character, kind of unlocked as you would in like an old school RPG or something. So you're starting very simple. You heal much slower, but this forces downtime. So far, my characters haven't taken damage. So they haven't encountered, well, they know about, but they haven't encountered this mechanic. But my goal with this mechanic is to force downtime. Not in a bad way, because they have 2 characters. So if they have an injured character, that character can sit at camp, practice doing what they're doing, upkeep their gear, maybe do some light foraging, but recover while their other characters with everyone else off adventuring. So during this downtime, that's when level ups have to happen. If you hit an XP threshold, you don't get the level until you spend downtime. I'm thinking 1 day per level of downtime to advance. I think that's pretty good. And then also, so level ups occur during downtime. The healing mechanic encourages downtime, and it also puts resource pressure on your character's health, right? If something has a time frame, you really have to budget when you're going to fight, how you're going to fight, who you fight, how far you press without taking a couple days to recover, maybe. So I'm really excited for the management and the stress that puts on the player characters. Short rests in my campaign are 1 hour, and long rests are close to a 24-hour period, about a day. We're playing loose. I'm not a stickler, but about a day of kind of rest and recovery is a long rest. Cool. We'll begin domain play around level 7, ideally, but that's a long way off, I think. I'm doing both some monster XP for kills, but also the majority of the treasure, or the majority of their XP will come from treasure. Like 1 gold value recovered will be an XP. And this is because I'm running a sandbox. I've prepared a small alpine valley as my green hill zone that's crawling with goblins and needs cleansing. You probably won't be able to see it, but on the off chance that you do, this is the hex map I have. These are 2-mile hexes. It worked good enough for me. Yeah, that's it's not gonna be great. But so my characters, or my players, have one rogue, a fighter, a barbarian, and a wizard. So they've covered all their bases from the available starting classes. They rolled their characters, and rolling their characters involves simply attributes, class, and race selection. I limited it to halflings and humans because they're coming from a very mundane world that's slightly magical and going into a more magical world. So they'll encounter more races so that they can make characters of other races in the future, but it'll be a natural evolution and they'll understand the place that that species has in this world. Instead of having the base supplies, each character got 50 gold pieces with which to budget and purchase weapons and armor and some adventuring kit. I'm assuming they have a backpack, they have a bedroll, they have something to make some food in, they have basic supplies, but extra ropes, weapons, armor, that sort of thing. They have 50 gold to budget, and they did pretty good. They got some hunting traps, they got weapons, they got rope and chain and some iron spikes and stuff. They portioned their wealth pretty well. Now, every character gets to roll a d20, and if it is a 20, they get to start with a horse. We have, out of 4 characters, we have 1 horse in this party. That was kind of a spur of the moment thing, like right before I went to DM this game tonight. I decided to add that, and I'm really glad I did, because now they have this precious resource that allows their rogue, who's their scout, to just go ahead really fast, scout stuff out, come back to the party, and be like, hey, a mile down there, there's some wackadoodle shit going on, And it worked out really well. And they only have 1, so it's a precious and rare resource. Let's see, I had a phenomenal success with the tables that I wrote out. And the way I did this, that I think I found very clever of myself, was that I kind of built a table within a table. So it's my during your walk you come across. And this is a 1d12 roll. 1 through 6 in the Green Hill Zone. 1 through 6, they come across a Kraglin corpse, which is essentially a goblin. They're little gray-skinned, Bronze Age, little horror men. So 1 through 6, they come across a Kraglin's corpse, and then they roll 2d6 for a table for things that they find on the Kraglin. Now what I did is the 2d6 has, on the extremes, so 2, 3, and 4, they have better items that they can recover from this corpse, but once they recover that, I'll change that item out with something else. Same thing with 10, 11, and 12. So right now, you don't care about the details. Details don't matter. So 2, 3, and 4, and 10, 11, and 12 on the 2d6 are things that will change out over time as they roll them and collect them. So they have fresh things coming through. But then the core of what the Kraglins have is going to be their wooden shields, their bronze javelins, their bronze hand axes, crude spears, and a hide sack. So it doesn't, like, if you lose everything, if you're captured by an ogre, you escape with nothing, you might come across a corpse that has, it's a shitty weapon, it's a weapon, it's a sack, it's a crappy sack, you can hold some stuff in it. So you can always recover. There's plenty of these little bits of loot out for you to recover. And so that's, on a 1d12 roll, you roll the Kraglin table. There's a similar table for a human corpse. And then on 10 to 11, we roll on a 2d6 a ruin table. So they come across some sort of old ruin. It's a little cabin or an old tower or, that sort of thing. And like the other tables, I've selected 6, 7, and 8 to be always the same. It's a flask of oil, a jug, so they always have something to collect water or liquids in, and 1d4 candles. So my idea there is just have like a core things that they're likely to get that kind of everyone would have in this, well, what is a fallen civilization from 1,000 years ago or whatever. But then other things that will be changed out include a block and tackle, a tent, a bedroll, 20 feet of chain, a hunting trap, discarded stave. Statue actually need to change the discarded stave because they rolled the discarded stave. It wound up being kind of carved by, they don't know it yet, but a wizard who was slain by these goblins, but he left it in his shack. The goblins didn't give a shit. It's a carved stick. They don't care. So they found it. The runes on it match the runes on some standing stones they found. We can talk about that later. Yeah, a spyglass is number 12. So that would be dope because you're adventuring around. They're going to want a spyglass. And then 12 is a stash. And the stash has magical items. And the stash, every single item will change. They came across an immovable rod. They don't know it's an immovable rod yet. And so I'm going to have to change 2 entries. But so that's kind of like just wandering loot. And then I also have a locale generator with weather and with a creature generator. Didn't need to use it. But then I have, okay. I guess that's it for the important stuff. I have a hex crawling procedure because this takes place on a hex map. I have turn orders. But yeah, okay. So that's where we're at in terms of my mechanical things that I've innovated, and I was, very pleased with the success of my ideas and my innovations. I really enjoy my initiative system. It plays really well. I really enjoyed the 1d4 contiguous terrain that players get to put down. I think they play together really well, and they create a lot more story. So now we get to the fun part. We're loosening up, we're talking. Man, I would like to dedicate this campaign to a great D&D inspiration of mine, someone who has broken me through a intense creative fog and really invigorated RPG creation in me, and that's Hanker Infernale, Brandish Gilhelm, that is Runehammer. So in the name of Runehammer, we're having a drink so that we can plan D&D a little bit more better. Okay. Now the story of my characters, my players, my party. It is irrelevant where they came from. More... To describe the land they came from bears no or little import to this story. It is sufficient to say that the party were members of a rebellion, a failed rebellion against a tyrant lord. They were supposed to be executed. They were captured, but through either political dealings, bribery, favors, or simply luck, they were sentenced to exile. And so they were sent to the edge of the kingdom to a keep called Fengalan, a keep which sits at a very, very narrow passageway between mountains. And on the other side of the mountains lies a land told to be the home of elves and giants and magical things that no one has adventured in since the times of ancient heroes. So they find themselves exiled from the mortal world, from the mundane world, well, the relatively mundane world, and They find themselves with a drawbridge closing behind them, hostile guards jeering at them and laughing at them as they look out into a new world. As they look around, they see a fairly large mountain valley, alpine, rolling hills right in front of them. To sort of the northeast, there's a hill which has a gigantic lone ash tree. And this is about 4 miles from them, 3-4 miles. Directly to the north, there's a waterfall and a hilly field of, well, not hilly, a hilly area of standing stones. To the south, nearby to the south too, there is a small pine forest. Straight to the east, there is a marsh and a small lake. And this is all they can see. They can only see from the beginning the first half of the map of this beginning area. And so immediately they're intrigued by the standing stones. On their way there, they are walking mostly together. The rogue, the halfling rogue, who has a horse, is half a mile ahead and rolls very well and crests one of these rolling alpine hills. And quarter mile or so away on the peak of another hill spies 6 figures. Not very distinguishable in the conditions of the day and the distance, but 6 figures hunched around doing something. This rogue returns to the party, and they decide it's best not to engage. We don't know who this is, what it is, intentions, allegiances. So instead of continuing north-northeast, they make a pivot to go north. This is successful. They circumnavigate the potential foe. They find this area where there's about 20 of these tall standing stones, and each standing stone has kind of a, let's say this is an example one, kind of a rainbow of symbols with, you know, a figure in the middle. Can't really read that very well, I'm sure. But so they find about 20 of these spread over a few miles of these rolling alpine hills, and they all have a strange script on it. The wizard realizes that this script is something he's been acquainted with in their old world, but he's not very familiar with them. So he decides to spend the rest of the day figuring out what's going on. And this is where having my players roll 2 characters each came into handy. The wizard and a fighter got to stay there while the players went off with their other characters, a barbarian and a rogue, to kind of explore that region and to see what else was there and what they could find. They came across a cart abandoned next to the corpse of a man. A little bit strange. I think they gathered something off of the man. It was a sack, like a leather bag. So they leave the cart for now, because in that area where they had found the cart, they had seen that the valley actually extends a little bit further, a couple more miles of a valley, and they decided to go adventure in that valley. And in that valley, they found a large stone structure, a simple kind of Neolithic structure where, you know, you've got a rock suspended in the air on top of 2 stone pillars. So it's kind of a dolmeny kind of thing. And they investigate this. They find that there's an altar. There's more of these stones. The altar has a polished surface that has been weathered and has pockmarks, but it began as a flat, polished surface. So they investigate this a little bit. They're about to walk through it when the barbarian, who rolled a dirty 20 on his perception, notices a scuffling behind a boulder and 3 heads. 3 of these gray heads, and they've seen these creatures before from far off. So they call out, "Who goes there?" And there's a panicked, skittering language they don't understand, and they begin to, this barbarian and this rogue, separate and begin to kind of pincer maneuver these, well, they didn't know at the time, but goblins. And these goblins are hiding with their bronze weapons behind this rock, and as soon as they get a chance, one of them throws a spear at the barbarian. The goblins had not noticed the rogue, and so combat begins. Now remember, we have my initiative system and my terrain building system. So the first thing we do is we establish that the players start at the start. Roughly. And over here is a boulder that the goblins are hiding behind. First thing we did, I rolled a 3, and I put another boulder about 30 feet just to the side so that the goblins could escape something. They placed a small but deep pond behind the goblins so they couldn't just sprint and turn away, and a stone that would act as a way for the rogue to go and approach the goblins without being seen. So, first movement phase occurs. The barbarian begins moving, kind of circling out, and the rogue begins circling the opposite way. One of the goblins then moves. Well, so we have barbarian begins circling. One of the goblins moves behind that other boulder. The rogue moves, and then these 2 goblins come out. Now, the barbarian moved here. Fuck, I don't need to do this whole thing. Anyway, I'm not going to be able to remember the turn by turn. Anyways, the development of the combat space and its interaction with the tactics was really fun because it permitted the characters to manipulate the terrain in a way that, in a strange way, felt natural, but also evolved and made really a 3 goblin encounter feel very interesting. There was nothing special. They didn't do any special moves or abilities, but the characters got to outwit some goblins, cut them in half, and have a good time. It was a very good, very classic D&D encounter, and I'm very proud of how it went. I'm super stoked. Let's see what happened next. They traced their path back to the cart. They returned to the Standing Stones where one of my players' fighters, the rogue's alternate, the fighter, had made camp and actually rolled very well on the survival roll on the table that I built, and so gained 1d4 rations worth of berries and nuts and things that they had collected, and had begun making a little campfire and making some food, so everyone got a good meal. The wizard rolled really poorly on his intelligence check to kind of decipher this ancient language, and so was frustrated with that. Night passed easily because very good camp roll. The next day, they adventured in the other direction. The wizard stayed, and the fighter the rogue, and the barbarian left to adventure. They went east instead of west. Now, to the east, there is a large waterfall. To the east, there was a large waterfall, and at the base of this waterfall was a small lake that has a river that runs kind of southeast. And at kind of the mouth of this river, there's a small little roofless stone hut, dilapidated, swallowed by moss. They find the corpse of a goblin there. They also find a carved wooden staff. And they explore around there a little bit and decide to return. On the return trip, they see those 6 goblins from the first day again. Far enough off, the goblins hadn't noticed them, and so they do some sneaky maneuvers, get back to camp. It's all good. Another night, the wizard decides that he's gonna not continue investigating these stones. I say that he's, made some markings in his book and kind of copied all the stones as best he can in the time he's been given, day and a half, 2 days. And he can continue pondering it, and, he can always return. So on the 3rd day, they set off to the shack that they found next to the river beneath the waterfall. And this is abutted by a very dense, thick cedar forest. As they're approaching, they see those same 6 goblins heading south along the riverbank. The goblins are unaware, and so the rogue on her horse follows them for a mile. Yeah, 2 miles. And so they're unaware, and she kind of stops and comes back. It's like, okay, they kept going. There's something down there. It's probably where they're all chilling at. And they go back to camp, and let's see, they decided to return to this ancient, long forgotten, long overgrown road that stems from the fort, the pass that they had been kind of unceremoniously kicked out of. And so they cross the river back and head south. They go past the giant ash tree and kind of stumble back upon a part of the path that they hadn't explored. In this place, they find that as they look south, they can see this marsh, and they can see a lake, and the lake has a small island in it. It's a large lake, kind of a horseshoe-shaped lake with a bulbous one end, kind of a gourd-shaped lake. And in the large portion of the gourd, there is an island and a leaning tower. They decide that they don't want to dismantle the cart and try to make a boat or spend all the time slogging through the marsh to get to the lake. So they're gonna follow the road. After a really bad roll, the rogue just comes around the corner on their horse and sees a wooden little lookout tower. There's a lookout staring right at her. So she whips around, goes back to the party. They're like, shit, there's a goblin in the tower. We gotta go deal with that. Good stealth roll by the wizard, and a good sleep spell puts the guard to sleep. They go up, kill the guard. They don't realize at this point that there was multiple guards, and in the time it took their scout to return to the party, for them to decide what to do, return to the tower, and cast the sleep spell, the scout has fucked off. The scout ran away and ran to a fort that has 100 goblins in it. So they go to the tower, they kill the goblin that's asleep, and they decide to continue down the road. Before they continue down the road, they look up in the tower and they see this fort. They're like, well, goblins haven't really been shown to have good stuff. It's rough cut hide, poorly tanned hide, bronze items. They're probably not building these forts. And so they kind of approach and they're like, yeah, let's be careful though. So they stash their cart and their horse in the cedar wood, and they approach the fort and they sneak around, go to the side, and the rogue climbs up the wall and peers over. Well, suddenly you see 100 goblins making a calamitous commotion, gearing up for battle, and the rogue jumps down, is caught by the barbarian off the walls, and They hightail it out of there, get back to their horse, get back to their cart, hide deeper in the forest, and the rogue hides by the trail side, and watches as 20 goblins, so only about a fifth of the garrison, pour out and run over to the tower. So I got a very fun moment where I got to just listen to my two players deliberate about their plans, stress and worry over saving the horse and saving the cart, and is it worth it to keep the cart, which will be slower and louder and force them to go on the road and not through the forest, or should they just try to like book it past this fort? They don't know what's past the fort. They consider trying to bypass the fort, but that turns out to be a bad plan. And they decide to very painstakingly make their way up through the forest to try to get past that lookout tower by the bridge over the river that they had crossed and encountered earlier. And they successfully do so, showing up about midway between that and the waterfall. So they're safe for now, and that's where we ended the session. It was really great. Yeah. Let's see. What do I want to change and adapt? Is there anything I want to change and adapt? What am I hopeful for the next session? Where's my Jägermeister? Jägermeister. Let's see. I'm very happy with my initiative system, and I'm very happy with my terrain system, my mid-combat terrain adjustment system, generation system. I think some of my table work and my kind of clerical things, this is the first time I've done like an exploration thing, so I need to practice that and I'll get better at it. I need to lock in and secure the way that I'm going to do random encounters and how I'm going to roll them. I kind of freeballed it and I wanted to guide the first session a little bit. So I wasn't rolling on tables, but I need to, I think in a similar way that I did with my kind of you come across something as you're walking tables, make a similar thing for encounters. Maybe do the same D12 that selects sub-tables, right? So maybe I'll do D12, maybe, man, 1 through 4 is fuck all happens on that day. 5 through 10 could maybe be like a weather or an environmental struggle or just an occurrence. Oh yeah, because I can have the 2d6 table, so there's just occurrences in the middle where the peak of the bell curve is, and then out of the tails I can have struggles like a sudden gale comes through or something. So 1 through 4, 5 through 10, and then maybe 1 through 4, 5 through 7 will be environmental thing. Wait, what was it? Yeah, I don't need to figure it out on camera. Yeah, I definitely need to create my own kind of random encounter table. I had one. I didn't like the system, so we're going to go with that 1d12 system with the 2d6 subtables. It worked very well for me. I want, because it's my own initiative system, I've adjusted a lot of creatures. My main low-level one really was goblins that was applicable here. So I need to create, I referenced wargs, and I was just going to pull straight from the monster manual, but I want to make my own warg. And, I need to create some flora and fauna. Um, yeah, some flora and fauna. I need to do a little bit better job of tracking what they're doing. For instance, on the second day, as they're returning from the shack to the Standing Stones base camp, they set some hunting traps and left them. I should have written that down. Of course, they also need to remember it. I'm going to give them a freebie and be like, hey guys, you checked the traps. We're just going to say something happened or didn't happen, but you recovered them before you left the next day. But in the future, you need to specify that, or I will simply, you just don't have them. I mean, they're back in the same spot that you left them. So clerical work needs to be improved. I don't need to improve it that much, just a little bit. Yeah, I think really those are the two things I want to focus on: random encounters and clerical work, and flora and fauna. Some stat blocks for some things, and maybe some poisonous plants, some maybe magical and hallucinogenic plants, that sort of thing. I need to create some aerial threats, large birds, maybe like not a truly giant eagle, but like an enormous eagle. Maybe tries to kill halflings, swoops down and takes it. Oh no, a giant hawk. That's what it's going to be. Like a giant red-tailed hawk. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, wargs, game animals, giant red-tailed hawk. Okay. Yeah. That's my goals, and wandering monster tables. Cool. Fuck yeah, I'm so stoked. I'm starting to get tired. I just wanted to do this, much like Mr. Gilhelm. Same night, when you still have the afterglow, everything's fresh. Kind of say it out loud, cement it in your brain. Man, I'm really excited for this campaign. Really excited to see what they do. They've got an immovable rod, and they've got a, they don't know that yet, but got an immovable rod, a cart, a horse, 4 people in a dream. Yeah. Pursued by goblins. All right. Yeah, that's it. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Runehammer. Thank you, Brandish Gilhelm, Hanker Infernale. I really appreciate your content. I really appreciate your style, your vibe, your ambiance, in person and creativity. Cheers. Blessings upon Runehammeria.